Don't forget, ko-fi.com/stopwritingalone is a real simple way to show your support for what's going on here week after week. Hi everyone, this is Nicole Rivera and this is the Stop Writing Alone podcast for writers who are looking for their writing community. I know you want to find readers for your work, but I think your first step is to connect with other writers. That's what we're going to do here in the Stop Writing Alone podcast. We'll do writing prompts and other writing group activities, discover online writing communities, learn how to find local writing groups, or how to make your own. Join us as we explore, learn, and write. This week's episode of Stop Writing Alone is sponsored by the Creative Ways podcast. Host and long-term designer Emma Isaac's podcast features inspiring conversations with successful photographers, musicians, fashion designers, and more, who generously share tactical advice to motivate and educate creatives to stay on the path. Find it where you listen to your podcasts, and be sure to visit her website for a fun freebie at emmaisaacs.co.uk. And you can find that link in the show notes for today's episode. Hi, this is Nicole Rivera, and you're listening to the Stop Writing Alone podcast. For all you novel writers out there, I know you're counting days, you're looking at your calendar, and you're saying, Nano is coming, Nano is coming. For anyone who doesn't know what that means, NaNoWriMo is National Novel Writing Month, and it happens annually in November. Why am I talking about it today? Well, because everyone's talking about it now. We're getting emails from the people in NaNoWriMo headquarters that they're about to start their prep work. A lot of the local places are starting their prep for Nano, and you know, it is a good idea that if you are going to spend a month binge writing a novel, writing 50,000 words or more in 30 days, that you don't go in totally blind. And that's even for pantsers. And a pantser is a person who sits down and writes by the seat of their pants. They have a story idea, they open up a blank document, and they just go, go, go. And that is considered to be the opposite of someone who is a plotter, which is the person that, of course, we expect to be doing all this pre-planning. But nano prep is something that is just an advisable thing to do if you're going to take on a binge writing challenge like NaNoWriMo. So it's on everyone's, it's in everyone's inbox and on everyone's mind that's thinking about doing NaNoWriMo this month, this year, I should say, this November coming up. And one of the things that I try to do each year as I prepare is think about what technique I want to employ, what structure I want to look at, what are the quote-unquote rules that I want to follow. And in previous years, I've looked deeply at the hero's journey. I've looked at the 7-act structure. I've looked at Save the Cat Writes a Novel. And this year, as I've mentioned before, the Stop Writing Alone Happy Campers Club was reading Story Genius. So I was really thinking, this is the year I'm going to take Story Genius and ride through my NaNoWriMo project all the way through November using the teachings of Lisa Cron from Story Genius. And we're a little bit more than halfway through the book. And I love the book. And I would recommend it to anyone who's looking to build rich characters and meaningful stories. But I would also always recommend Save the Cat Writes a Novel. And this doesn't discount like the 7-act structure and the hero's journey. All these things are incorporated, right? And so what I have come to the conclusion, and this isn't anything really new, but I realize that every year I'm trying to I have this like internal battle that I need I'm giving up on my internal battle. And starting now, I'm just going to embrace my inner Frankenstein. I am going to be Dr. Frankenstein from now and always. And that is something that I was back in my teaching days. And I am now going to apply it to writing craft in a very meaningful way, not just like falling into Frankenstein as a sort of defeat. So what the heck do I mean by this? So I'm reading Story Genius. And in the beginning of the book, the first part of the book is all about it's about brain science and how our brains absorb story. And therefore how our readers absorb story. And so what is important for us to think about as writers when we're going into this? And a lot of the talk is about our protagonist's motivation, his or her why, their backstory, things that never really or may never really make it into our novel, but we have to sort of think through. And it's fascinating, and I think it's all relevant. And as I go further and further into now the technical formula, I don't even know if I want to call it a formula, but the technique through which Lisa Cron recommends that we now go into the actual writing of the novel, now I'm starting to feel stilted. She's got these Story Genius cards that the context of them and the content of them is brilliant and necessary and things that I need to have on my mind when I'm writing. But feeling like bound by this graphic organizer is a thing that suddenly I was like, but I don't think I'm going to do that. And I don't know about you guys. And if you read writing craft books or books on, the technique on how to write this novel, and somebody gives you like A, B, C, D, you do this. And then if you're not doing it exactly as they say, you sort of start to feel guilty and you're thinking, I'm not doing it right. Well, that's me in my first go around all the time, that if I don't follow all the steps, I'm like, oh, I'm not giving this technique a chance. Meanwhile, I already know from my experience as a teacher and a teacher coach that like the best thing you can do is Frankenstein it. You take a little piece of the Story Genius that works and you mash it together with the bits and pieces of Save the Cat that works for you. And then you pick up techniques from, a workshop that you went to and you mash that in. And like little by little, you create the monster of your writing technique. This is what I mean by embracing my Frankenstein. I am Dr. Frankenstein, and I'm going to start pulling together all these different things and what works for me and what makes sense for my writing style and my, working style, really what makes me most productive and doesn't stilt my creativity. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. And as I was talking in the book club tonight, I was saying, this isn't new to me. When I was teaching, that's how I would design a lesson. I would take, certain examples from one textbook, and I would see a methodology on how to like teach a thing from another book. I'd be like, oh, I like the way they teach it, but I like the examples in this book. And this book really does homework well. And like little by little, you would get a whole thing. But I've had this guilt when it comes to the teachings of writing, that what it comes down to is that I feel like I never give one full technique its due course by running it through. But I'm okay with that now, I think. I think the best thing to do is to Frankenstein your way to writing a great novel, a great short story. Just keep collecting as much information that works for you. Take what works for you. Leave the other stuff aside for the next Frankenstein to come along and pick up. And little by little, you'll come up with something and this is what I think is the kicker, right? You'll come up with something that seems like something totally new. And then before you know it, you'll be writing the next book on the perfect way to write a novel, because you will have figured out the perfect way for you to write a novel. And, it's probably not going to be the perfect way for anybody else, but somebody will Frankenstein it from you. They'll take some bits and pieces, and you will be helping someone else, because there will be a sentence or a chapter or a certain technique, or maybe your graphic organizer will be the thing that will be an absolute game changer for somebody else that they will toss together with everything else. So I just wanted to put that out there for all of you nano preppers out there. There's going to be loads and loads of advice coming at you from every direction, probably from me too. Brace yourself. I will have some gems of wisdom for you. I guess this is one of them. And what I want to give everyone permission to do right now is to be comfortable with your own critical thinking, that when you feel like something doesn't necessarily work for you, you're probably right. There are, of course, like standards of writing, and certain things are publishable and certain things are not. And, there are critiques that you can get from editors and copywriters and people in writing groups and that kind of feedback that, you need to absorb and say, well, maybe I do need to change something about my writing. But when it comes to subscribing to a particular method of writing, I think you can be your own critical assessor of what works for you and what doesn't. And something like NaNoWriMo is a great place to test these things out. So I always consider November to be sort of like a playground. And this year, that's nothing different. I'm going to be spending the next couple of weeks really like brainstorming and trying to think about like, what is the story that I want to dive into in November. And also I think like what bits and pieces I want to glom onto from all of the various writing advice that I've picked up in the last year that's added on to the 2019 edition of what I thought was the perfect way to complete a large writing project. So we're ever growing, we're ever learning. And this is the other thing, is that I think if you subscribe too soon to the quote unquote perfect technique, then you may think, I don't need to learn anymore. I'm just going to do this forever. That's always going to work. And you never, ever know where you're going to find that one tip or that one tweak to your thinking that will match up perfectly with the writing of the moment. Oh, and that's the other thing. I do believe that every single writing project you have has a technique all its own. So it's whatever I think is going to be the perfect way to write a novel in 2020 is probably going to be dramatically different than what will work for me perfectly in 2024. It's just ever changing, because I never stop reading all these things and absorbing new information. So that's today's episode, is empowering you to be your own critical thinker, be your own Frankenstein. Take all the information that you can find out there, smash it all together, make up your new techniques, and start sharing it with everyone, everywhere. And let us know what works for you. What will you be doing this year? Are you going to do NaNoWriMo? Have you found a technique that really jives with you? I mean, I do think there are some people that some stuff just works perfectly for them and they're into it. I seem to need like a mix and match scenario. So just curious. So come check in over on the Facebook group, the Stop Writing Alone with Nicole Rivera Facebook group, and let us know. And also this week, there will be a couple of writing events. So if you're listening to this live, Thursday afternoon and Friday afternoon, there will be some writing events. And also next week, there will be some, but I don't have my schedule solid yet due to remote learning and home scheduling situations. So as soon as that becomes available, you will find out if you are subscribed to the Stop Writing Alone email newsletter. And if you need to know how to do that, number one, there's always a link in the show notes. So wherever you're listening to this podcast, if you just go to the description of the show, you will see a link for signing up for the Stop Writing Alone mailing list. But you could also always just go to stopwritingalone.com and there will be a pop-up there. And if you put in your email address, whenever there is a live writing event happening anywhere in the Stop Writing Alone community, which for the most part is typically on a Zoom call, I will be emailing those links directly to everybody on the mailing list with the times and what the events are. So I hope to see you and write with you coming up very soon. And as we go into the fall and get closer and closer to, the annual Nano event, there will be more and more opportunities to do so, to write together. And again, that's not just for me. This is the season of writing community all over. And don't forget, as I mentioned in a previous episode, that NaNoWriMo themselves said that they will not endorse any in-person events this year due to the pandemic and due to the risks. So this is the year to find and connect with all types of writing communities online. So there's just lots of opportunities, and you can check out the NaNoWriMo website. You can check out the Shut Up and Write website. And as one of the members of the Happy Campers Club, Jennifer Holdridge, always reminds me, you could check out Eventbrite right now. Eventbrite is a great website that is always sharing events, local events. And this is not just writing events, but anything that you want to do. It's just a great place for people to share events and sell tickets to things. But ever since the pandemic, everything's been virtual. So there's just, it's this great holding space for all these virtual events. You can attend, writing webinars and mini conferences and things that should have been, someplace far, far away from you that you could never get to, that now all have to be handled online, so you have access to. So those are just a couple of the resources for you so that you can find writing events, you can find writing webinars to gather more information to build your own writing monster as the Dr. Frankenstein you are, but also some books that I like to recommend to people who are thinking about writing a novel and looking at things like story structure. I mean, I think I mentioned them already. Story Genius is on my list this year big time. I love Save the Cat Writes a Novel by Jessica Brody. And I'm sorry, Story Genius is by Lisa Cron. And I should advise that Story Genius is kind of like a workbook. Some of these books you can read and absorb the information. Some of them, the writers ask you to sort of interact with as you go along. Some podcasts that you can listen to get lots of information and teaching on all things writing. I am a huge fan of Writing Excuses. They have, I don't even know, I want to say they're on season 17 or something ludicrous like that. DIY MFA is another great writing podcast that you can listen to. I Should Be Writing. I love to listen to Mer Lafferty, and she typically has some things going on during NaNoWriMo. So, I mean, these lists go on forever, but I just wanted to leave you with a couple of tools to help build up your arsenal of things, of writing information, so that you could write your novel in whatever way best suits your style of writing this year. And perhaps I should have saved an episode discussing Frankenstein for a little bit later in October, but that was what was on my mind today, so I wanted to share it with you now, and I hope it helps in some way. But let me know, like I said earlier, what resources you love to use, you love to Frankenstein, or the techniques that have just worked for you wholesale, like the whole thing. Maybe you bought in. I'd love to know what it is. Either way, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next week. Before we go, I'd like to give another quick thank you to the sponsor this week, Creative Ways Podcast, and more specifically the host of that podcast, Emma Isaacs. I'd love for you guys to head on over to Emma's Instagram account. It's at Emma Isaacs Design, and check out the video that she posted this week, all about how we can be productive in the next 90 days, making the next 90 days our really make the most of this time to make sure that we reach our goals. I'm not going to spoil it all for you, but she has a whole technique that she uses with her calendar and how she breaks it down into chunks to ensure that she's getting things done without overwhelming herself and really prioritizing what comes next. And it's simple, it's fantastic, it's made for us, these creative minds, where we're all over the place. We've got all different ideas. We want to do them all at once, but we all know we can't. So how do you choose? You just gotta, go little by little. Go check out at Emma Isaacs Design. And Emma's a podcast host, like we've been saying for these weeks of the Creative Ways podcast, but she's also a creativity coach. If you like what she has to say about this 90-day plan, head on over into her DMs, connect with her. She's good people. She's going to steer you the right way. I just want to say thank you again, Emma, for supporting us all these weeks. One last thing, we've discussed a number of books this episode, and if you're interested in purchasing any of those books or any other books that we discuss on Stop Writing Alone, don't forget that we have a bookshop. If you head on over to bookshop.org/shop/stopwritingalone, any purchases that you make using that link in that shop, the proceeds will not only go to helping a local bookshop near you, which is what happens with every purchase you make in bookshop.org, but they will also have a portion of your sales will go to help the Stop Writing Alone podcast and community. So I'd like to thank everyone who has been shopping at the Stop Writing Alone bookshop. Thank you on behalf of me and also on behalf of bookshop.org. I love what this company is doing, and I just want to thank you for helping me support such a cool new website. Have a great week. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the Stop Writing Alone podcast wherever you're listening to this episode today. Then connect with us on Facebook at Stop Writing Alone Facebook page, or in the Stop Writing Alone with Nicole Rivera Facebook group. Check Instagram or Twitter, where I'm at NV_Rivera, to find links to our email newsletter. Happy writing. See you next week.